7 minutes.
I want to thank Deputy Chambers for bringing forward this bill, and as my colleague Statute has outlined, we will be supporting it and supporting it wholeheartedly. It is a short and a simple bill, but an extremely important one, and it addresses issues that we are all familiar with. Although the group is small, the issue of thalidomide is very well known and the arguments very well rehearsed. As we know, this was a drug that was used in the late 1950s and the early 1960s. It was withdrawn from the market in '61, but it would be 2012 before the manufacturer, the Grünenthal Group, would issue a half-hearted and insincere apology. For 50 years, they were silent. All the while, people had to live with the consequences of what this drug had done to them. Families and friends had to live with it too. And what was the role of the Irish state during this process? To issue what can at best be called an ineffective recall of the drug once the devastating side effects became apparent. Only a number of years ago, Primetime Investigates exposed that the Irish government deliberately did not issue a public warning about the dangers of thalidomide because it believed that such a move would be undesirable. The documents uncovered by that programme show that the government decided not to make a public announcement about the dangers of the drug, but instead left it up to chemists and medical officers to withdraw it from the shelves. One would have thought, given the roles they played in the creation and the perpetuation of this scandal, that the Grünenthal Group and the Irish state would acknowledge in full the damage and the hurt that they have caused and do all that they could to set things right. However, now in 2018, with all that we know and all that we have found out, we have both the state and the Grünenthal Group trying to use the statute of limitations to deny victims access to compensation. I have to tell you, Minister, I am very rarely shocked in this job, but actually the fact that the government is opposing this has shocked me. And I would urge you to reflect on that and to perhaps come to a different conclusion. Because it's clear that with the state and the Grünenthal Group using the Statute of Limitations Act to deny these victims, that the correct course of action for us as legislators is to amend the Statute of Limitations Act. And I commend once again Deputy Chambers for giving us the opportunity to do that. The bill seeks to amend the 57 Act, specifically Section 48 relating to disability. The state should not be in league with Big Pharma, and it shouldn't be allowing these companies to dodge their responsibilities when it comes to paying compensation. It is our job to fight for those affected and to hold power to account, and that is what we must do in this instance. Speaking on this bill tonight, I am reminded of those children affected due to the taking of Epilim during pregnancy. And when you look back, Minister, on the history of thalidomide, the parallels are shocking. And what that tells me is that no lessons have been learned, that we're not capable of looking back and seeing what is basically a copy of what happened. There are so many similarities. And Minister, I echo the call made by Deputy O'Quailon. I would urge you to examine this issue, because the parallels, when I started to prepare a few remarks for this evening, the parallels between the two are quite shocking. And day after day, we come in here and we talk about scandals of the past, and then we all nod our heads and say, oh, we're absolutely certain that that won't happen again. We talk about the Magdalen laundries and then we see direct provision. But we're talking about a historic injustice, but actually the same is being perpetuated again and again. The regulators knew about the risk with sodium valproate when they were considering licensing it. The women were not warned that the epilepsy drug could cause birth defects and developmental problems in their babies. This is an issue which Sinn Féin is very proud to be active on, and it's an issue which we have taken on. But, Minister, when I look at the history and I see that history is about to repeat itself in a very, very shocking way, we should all be listening to those alarm bells. The victims of the thalidomide scandal should, at the very least, have the right to have their case heard before the court. And I don't think that that is an unreasonable request for a group of people who have the sympathy of the general public, for whom we would all want the very best. But the very least that they deserve is the opportunity to have their case heard in court. And that's why I believe we should ensure that this bill is passed. The Irish state, through the Irish Thalidomide Medical Assessment Board of the 1960s, outright failed to acknowledge many of those who were injured through the ingestion of thalidomide by their mothers. 50 years on, victims are still emerging as a consequence of the cover-up of patient records. The role of the state over the past 15 years has been despicable. Successive governments have failed to address this issue adequately. Less than 10 years ago, Mary Harney offered a take-it-or-leave-it package amounting to approximately €2 million to be shared equally between the 32 survivors at the time, and a slight increase in their monthly payment. That wasn't good enough for the then Minister, and it represented really a continuation of the state's failure to do the right thing. And as has been pointed out previously, this is not a growing number of people. The number of people involved in this do not have time on their side, Minister. They are a group that is regrettably diminishing in numbers. This is a very time-sensitive issue, and to use the statute of limitations against this group, I believe is wrong. And I think, Minister, and I really would urge you, because I know that you are very genuine in your words, I would urge you to reflect on whether or not it might be possible to support this bill. But Sinn Féin will be supporting this bill. And I will conclude by saying once again that I commend Deputy Chambers for bringing this short, very simple, but very important and very necessary piece of legislation to the House this evening.